dysfunctional vet. I'm out here on my workspace area and I have a device which is made to expand pipe. As you can see, it just consists of these rings. What I'll be doing in just a minute, I'm going to remove this black tape. I'm going to put a line across here and a line across there. And every so often you have to shrink this down just a bit. There you can see it getting smaller. You shrink this down just a little bit and you physically turn it so that you don't get a flat spot as you're expanding your pipe. Now, this pipe is held using a clamp. Let me show you that. This is the clamp that I'm using. This is something that I use whenever I'm cutting or welding pipe. It just holds it in place. It's just a common C-clamp with that angle iron welded onto it. It's something that I saw out at an auction one time where they were selling some oil field equipment and they had a big heavy duty real live cast, no, it wasn't cast, it was stainless. It was all welded up and the whole kit and caboodle went for about $800 with all the equipment, but I just copied it. This is an Irwin and it's a soft metal. This was welded with a 6013. I cleaned up this metal super good, cleaned this up real good, and then welded it together. And I have a clamp now to hold that. So let's see what happens. One last thing, on the clamp down there that I'm expanding, it came from Harbor Freight, and you use a high temperature, high pressure grease on it because you're going to be pushing this stuff apart. So let's get started. If you look here, using a Sharpie, I've put a line here and a line there, and I've indicated that this is open. Now, I put the open on there for the viewer, not for myself. The voices that you hear in the background is old-time radio, which I listen to. What we want to do is we want to turn this handle. This is a 3/4 inch socket which fits this piece pretty well, and we want to turn it carefully and slowly. Something to be aware of, we're going to have to be turning this, as I described a moment ago, every so often in order to keep from getting a flat spot on here. Now I have a piece of pipe that I cut off of this. Remember the black tape? That was so I could cut a straight line. So now we're going to expand this a little bit at a time. Okay, I had to get a cheater. A little bit of pressure on this thing. What I want to do is turn this about a 1/4 turn, and my vise just broke. I'm going to have to get a different vise for this. Now I want to back the pressure off. Now we back it off to where we can slide it out. Now this is where we started, so we want to turn it We'll put this right here. We'll switch this back. I've got a swivel on this. I'm pulling the got a swivel. I'm going to pull that off because that's just a pain. Now we'll start to expand it out just a little bit. We'll have to do this a couple of times in order to get the pipe to stretch. So we do this one more time here. That poor little vise. I'm going to have to put a pipe vise on this. Tie that sucker down. Let's see what we get. Yeah, I'm going to have to put a pipe vise on it. Tied down with a vise, but the vise is not tied down. I'm hoping this will kind of hold it. If not, then I'll strap this down. We're going to try again. Alright. It's trying to move on me. Hopefully it won't. Hopefully I can hold it. I'm only trying to turn this about 1/4 of a turn at a moment. Oh, pretty tough. We'll now back it off and we'll slide it a little bit. Alright, now we'll start tightening it up again. And we'll keep doing this until we get it expanded out enough. A moment ago, I took a piece of pipe and I checked it for diameter, and currently it's slightly larger than this. So we are getting there. It's taking a little bit of effort, but we'll get it. I'll tune back in when I get caught up. Now, when I started with this thing, it was exactly 3 inches in diameter. I'm about to measure to see where it is. Now that it's beginning to flare a little bit, it's actually easier to continue the expansion. And in just a moment, I'm going to have to back this off and rotate this thing so that it'll continue to go. But let's see where this is at. This is the original right here, and as you can see, the inside diameter is about 2 and just slightly more than 3/4. Not quite 7/8, but close to it. This ruler is a bit rubbed out and it's kind of hard to read the lines. Let's see where this other one is. I just measured this other one right here. The inside diameter with this shaft in the way is pushing almost 3 inches. It's a possibility that that other piece may not be perfectly round, so I'm going to go ahead and expand this a little bit more, and then once I've got that done, then I'll try to size it. Now I'm leaving the metal in there under tension while I'm filming this. Now the metal, once it's expanded, it should hold it because it's being pressed out, but I left it in place so that you could see the way it was. And if you'll notice right here, I've got to back this off a little bit to compensate for this flat spot that would be being formed here. If I didn't mention this, as I'm expanding this, it's easier and easier and easier to expand this metal using this thing as it's getting larger. I guess the metal is grabbing a memory for expansion. But anyway, I'm going to back it off, I'm going to turn it, and then we're going to start all over again. This is a safety tip. As I'm expanding this thing, I am raising my bar up, and then I'm putting my body weight on it to press down. I'm being very careful to keep the weight off of my knees so that it's my body weight pressing against it and I don't end up getting a compressed spine. If, when you're trying to tighten something or loosen it and you're lifting up, you risk injury to your spinal column, usually in the lower to lumbar region. And by putting my body weight on this and just kind of flexing my knees a little bit so that my body physically pushes it down, I'm preserving my health such that it is, and I'm able to expand it. Now, I just measured this a minute ago from one side to the other, looking down on it vertically, and it looks like I'm real close to having this in place. A minute ago, this little baby was getting really warm to the touch, which meant that the metal was expanding, and I think I'm real close to having it to where I want. I'm letting it just rest for a minute, and then I'll go back to tightening it. It is beginning to make a lot of sounds of squeaking in here, and to really do this right, I think you need to disassemble or take the nut off and completely grease that rod, and then put the nut back on after you slide it through. That's what I would recommend. I didn't do that. I was just putting the grease on where I thought it needed to be in order to expand out, and it's nowhere near. The nut is way back in here. The expansion is more or less in about a 3-inch zone here. It's not as far back. Now this piece right here is about 4 inches long, and yes, it's expanding out, but it's not expanding as well as I would kind of have thought it might. Now, I've seen this done at a muffler shop using a hydraulic press, and that thing expanded the whole thing out in a matter of seconds. Again, it's not somebody with a 3/8 inch drive ratchet trying to tighten it up, but it is working. So I'll continue this until I get it into place, and once I have that done, then I will have that done and I'll show you the results. I'll not be recording until this has been expanded out fully. I just measured the inside of this, and I came up with just slightly over 74 millimeters from one side to the other. And I'm using a metric caliper. I'm using a metric caliper to do these measurements. And there is a way you can get an error in this, but I'm not going to get into all that right at this moment. I measured the outside of the pipe on the piece it has to go in, and it is 76.5 millimeters. So I need to go about 77 to 78 so that I have a little bit of extra space in here. Now remember, when this thing heats up, it could kind of expand and it could kind of grab itself to it. And so what I want is I want something that will slide in, slide off in case I need to take a chimney piece out or ever do a repair. I'm not anticipating a repair, but well, actually I am. This caliper that you see right here is sold by a company called Tooms, T-O-O-M-S. They are located in Germany. In fact, they're all across Germany. They're a real good store. They're sort of like a Globe was back in the day, if you're old enough to remember Globe. Not a Walmart's, more like a Globe. And it's a real good caliper. I paid about €8. I paid about €8, which is maybe 12 bucks. So if you're wondering about it, that's where it came from. The number on it is a 6635008. You may be able to buy this online. I'm not sure, but it's real good. Anyway, I need to expand this out. Once I reach my outside diameter that I'm after, my inside diameter, then I will spin this to compensate for this, for the flat spots that are created, and then I'll fit it, I'll size it, I'll film that, and then I'm going to call this quits for a while, because this is taking much longer than what I thought it would do. Coming back to this, now this has been a couple of hours. I've taken a couple of breaks. I'm not as young as I used to be. That's not completely true. I got lazy. The pipe now fits inside there fairly well, and it slides in, slides out, though not very tight. The other end, now remember, pipe can be bent. This one just barely fits in a little bit, but then it fits in pretty good like that. So I'm going to do this a little bit more to where it comes in and out. Now I've been at this for almost 4 hours and probably a two solid hours of expanding the pipe, loosening it, turning it, expanding it, and loosening it. At least 2 hours, maybe more. So I don't want you to think that you can get one of these tools and just have it done in a few minutes. But it does work, and it's not bad as far as this goes. Now, as far as the fit is concerned, if I was trying to make a muffler, I could weld this with a what do you call it? A wire welder, and get a good fit on it, and then it would be nice and tight. I don't need to do that. This is going to be a chimenea. I just want a piece that's in my I want a piece that's in the burner, and then the chimney that fits down on top, and I can put a little damper in here to kind of control the burn so that it burns both clean and hot. So at least I'm halfway there now. It's now fitting. No real complaints. Now again, this is from Harbor Freight. I'm not sure what the item is called, but it's used for stretching muffler pipe, and this is 3-inch muffler pipe. This is the larger of the expanders they have. You tighten, you loosen, you move it, you tighten, you loosen, you turn it, and it does work. But I want this right now. This is only fitting in about 1 inch. I want it to fit in all the way to the back. I want it to fit in smoothly, cleanly, and this has a few tight spots on it. So anyway, we are where we want. I'm going to call this a wrap. I'm going to close this up, start the film to processing. But we know that it works. I will tell you that I needed an 18-inch cheater to tighten it. When it would start to squeak, I would back it off, turn it, tighten it up. The larger this is getting, the more that I can stretch it before it starts to squeak. And I don't know if you can see it right there. That's the demarcation where it's expanding. So I'm real happy with this. It did work. Should I have eaten my Wheaties? Would it have helped? I don't know. But right now I'm getting pretty munchy, and I'm thinking I'm going to probably go eat something that I have in the refrigerator. With that said, Dysfunctional Vet wishes all of you a happy new 2022, and let's hope that everything is good. Dysfunctional Vet out. An amendment after I've signed off. I put the thing back in. It slides in quite deep, about almost to the top. There's a few spots where it'll go in a little better. It has to do with the roundness and the squareness of the tube. But basically, it's good to go. We're ready to turn this into the chimenea, which I had discussed earlier, which will be used for space heating. The tool I used comes from Harbor Freight. Looks just like this. It's used for expanding exhaust pipe. This is an exhaust pipe. It did work. It expanded it out. You need to put high pressure, high temperature grease on this. When it starts to squeak, back off, give it a little bit more, not much, maybe 1/8 of a turn, back off, turn this a little bit so that you keep this nice and round so that your next piece of pipe will fit in. Otherwise, this will square off. The instructions say to turn this frequently, and that is good advice. You remember I had the lines up here. I started here and here, and then I would move it just a little bit so that I was constantly rounding it out. Well, here we have it. Now this has been hours and hours of me doing this and taking breaks, but it does work, and we're ready to move on to the next step of turning a propane bottle into a chimenea slash space heater slash a headache for future generations.